Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2021-22 season. My name is Dan and today we have got a Game Week 34 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. The video where we kind of have a look at some transfer moves we can potentially make, try and advise you on some traps, some potential players we actually want to keep, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's the usual stuff. You guys are probably used to this series by now. Guys, if you do enjoy what you see today, please do leave a like. It really helps out the channel, and subscribe if you are new around here. Without further ado, let's have a look at the rules of the video. So buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in, sells are players you probably have but should consider removing, keeps are players that you might be thinking about removing but I think you should actually keep them, and avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now. I think you should actually potentially avoid these players. They could be potential traps. I just want to give the other side, the other perspective on the avoids. You know, sometimes I do get the avoids wrong. I try and go for players who are really, really popular, and often they are popular for a reason, but I just like to play devil's advocate on some of these picks, so not necessarily avoid them completely, but have a second thought before you buy them, and there's certainly players I won't be buying. But there you go, guys. It's a lot of focus on Chelsea today. I will warn you there. But here we go. Let's just get on with it. Let's start you off with some buys. So our first buy is Kai Havertz. So with Chelsea out of the Champions League and the Premier League being their sole focus until the FA Cup final next month, I think Havertz has to be the #1 transfer target for Game Week 34, mostly because I think, you know, he's probably my favourite captain shout for the week. Chelsea have a great double game week at home against an average West Ham defence and a Man United defence that is kind of struggling right now a little bit. So I think this is the kind of double game week that actually looks a lot better than perhaps you would typically think of it being. I know they're big teams, you would say, West Ham and Man United, but I actually think Chelsea could do pretty well here. So Havertz is playing as the central striker for Chelsea, and he gets the extra points for goals and he gets the clean sheet points as well since he's listed as a midfielder, so he's an out of position player. He's become crucial to Chelsea's play recently. It's kind of looking like they've kind of finally found the striker that they've been searching for. It's finally clicking up front and they've got that primary goal scorer now, and this is kind of reflected in the stats that you see from Havertz. So particularly the shooting stats, Havertz is leading the way by some distance among his teammates. 15 shots, 14 of them in the box, 7 of which were big chances, with an insane 3.99 XG in his past 5 matches. None of his teammates come close to these numbers. Interestingly, he has also been second for key passes, joint with Mason Mount, who has got, I would say, more of the headlines recently. Speaking of Mount, I don't want to write him off as an option completely. He's clearly a good player and a good pick as well, but I think if we remove that strange Southampton game, we would probably all be leaning towards Havertz out of the two. Havertz has shown better consistency of returns over the past 5 and is actually scoring more points as well. Havertz's underlying numbers are considerably better, and at the end of the day, it's actively Havertz's role within this Chelsea team to score goals specifically. One more thing that does tempt me about Mount, though, is the minutes, as Mount is just that player who is well known as being the guy who plays every single game. But more recently, I think Havertz is kind of coming close in terms of nailedness. If I could get both, I absolutely would get both. If money was an issue, I would be more than happy to go for Mount instead of Havertz. But if I could have just one player for Game Week 34, it would be the German wonder Kai Havertz. The next buy is Reece James. So yes, I'm going for 2 Chelsea players this week in the buy section. Usually I do like to mix it up a bit, but honestly, I just think this is the week to target Chelsea as much as you physically can. If a Chelsea midfielder is not an option for you, then maybe get a Chelsea defender. If you already have 1 or 2 Chelsea players, who cares? Get another one. They've got a double game week right away, and you're going to want a captain for this double game week. And then they've got another double game week in 36. In between that, we've got some really tasty fixtures. Everton in 35, Leicester in 37, and they finish with Watford at home in 38 as well. So yeah, we want to go all in on Chelsea players because this run of fixtures is just looking really, really good, isn't it? Now, if we're talking in terms of pure explosivity, there are a few players better in FPL than Reece James. Recently, he's been a bit of a troll player, which I think will put a lot of people off, but I do think things have potentially changed. James is no longer coming back from that time directly after an injury. Chelsea are no longer in the Champions League. Their need to rotate him has significantly lessened. So with that said, I'm sure he has a couple of those game week revolutionising 20-pointers in him between now and the end of the season. Of course, if we're looking for the safety of a nailed player while keeping some attacking potential, Rudiger is a good shout too at a similar price. And honestly, I don't hate the idea of going for maybe a Marcus Alonso as well. People will perhaps disagree with me on that one, but Alonso's lack of competition for a place and some good performances recently has kind of potentially cemented himself in the team. And if you're scared of being burned by Alonso, remember James has burned a lot of us too. So as a backup option, if your budget doesn't quite allow for James, I think Alonso is okay. Basically, at this point, any first choice Chelsea player is a good idea. If you could choose any one player though, I'm sure you guys are going to be going for Reece James in defence. Onto some sells. We'll start you off with Alexandre Lacazette. Unfortunately, it does look like the Arsenal dream is slowly slipping away. Just these two injuries to Partey and Tierney, and the entire club seems to have fallen apart. Some poor performances, some poor results, mean that those players that you guys probably tripled up and doubled up on maybe on Arsenal, you know, maybe you kind of need to consider, well, reconsider, I guess, a little bit whether you want to go all in on Arsenal for the rest of the season. This week, Laka has come down with COVID, so that's the reason he didn't play at the weekend. But even before that, a string of poor performances and blanks, underlying stats that do leave a little bit to be desired. His saving grace, I guess, is that he takes up a forward slot, which, let's be honest, none of us really know how to fill up that forward slot. But my big problem with Laka in FPL is that it's extremely difficult to justify his huge price tag, because he seriously is actually really expensive player, far more expensive than a plethora of players that are just outscoring him every single week. I know, you know, maybe we don't directly relate it because Lacazette is a forward. We don't consider that, you know, 6.5 midfielders are outscoring him by a lot because you think, oh, they're different positions. But I think you kind of have to take that into consideration a little bit, that other positions for less price are doing much more, and you can perhaps spend your money a little bit better in some of the other positions. And what I'll also say about Lacazette is, coincidentally, he's about the same price as some of those Chelsea players we want to bring in. So it looks to me like Lacazette is the perfect make weight to make a double transfer, moving the money from Lacazette, downgrading him to a cheap forward like Mateta, for example, and then using the cash you freed up to upgrade one of your midfielders or Chelsea or defenders to a Chelsea one. Here's one more idea that I'm going to float out here. If you don't want to make a double transfer, I don't hate the idea of going for a Timo Werner as a bit of a differential. I know he's not a very fashionable FPL asset, but he's actually been playing quite well recently, and it does look like he's kind of becoming an important cog in the way Chelsea are playing at the moment, providing that pace on the left-hand side. So, yeah, a direct swap from Lacazette to Werner may not be the worst idea in the world, but I do prefer the idea of doing a double transfer to bring in someone like HAVERTZ or Mount, you know, taking out Lacazette, freeing up the funds and upgrading one of your midfielders. Either way, Laka is going to be the man to sacrifice this week in order to allow you to do this. The next sell is RAPHINHA. So I know a lot of you guys want me to come up with a midfielder that you can sell in order to get your Chelsea midfielder in. My best answer is RAPHINHA. Some people will say it's 1 week early to remove RAPHINHA since they play Crystal Palace next, but Palace away is not exactly an easy game these days, and whilst I have no doubt the RAF could get something out of this game week, Chelsea players can get you a lot more. And at the end of the day, we do have to sacrifice someone. And out of the popular players to sell, I think it's got to be between RAPHINHA and Saka, depending on who you have. The thing is, Saka has more to play for. You know, technically Arsenal still do have a shout for a top 4 finish, and if not, at least some kind of European football. And Arsenal, I do believe, have slightly better fixtures as well, and a decent double. Their double game week, Arsenal's looks pretty good. Leeds, on the other hand, tough game against Palace away, and then City, that's not great, is it? And then even after that, they have got a double game week, Leeds, but it's against Arsenal and Chelsea. And then they finish off the season with 2 okay fixtures, but meaningless fixtures against Brighton and Brentford away. So someone has to go, and by all means, if you've landed yourself with another midfielder that you're kind of not so keen on keeping, and you can actually keep RAPHINHA, fair enough. But certainly, out of the popular players, of popular midfielders, my preferred sacrifice is a player who I actually really like, RAPHINHA. Keeps now, we'll start you off with Harry Kane. I can't believe Harry Kane is one of the most sold players so far this game week. Actually, I kind of can, because he blanked last game week, but surely that's a huge knee-jerk. Him and Son have been everything in FPL in recent weeks. I mean, look at these insane underlying stats on screen right now. 19 shots in 5 game weeks, 5 big chances, 2.64 expected goals, a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous 16 key passes and 6 big chances created, 3.23 expected assists. These are absolutely loopy stats. One blank and it's sayonara Kane. Surely not, guys. Spurs still have so much to play for in the Premier League as they look to solidify a top 4 place. They have insanely good fixtures between now and the end of the season, including a Game Week 38 fixture against Norwich, where Kane is probably going to be the #1 captain pick there as well. He has a double in 36, which I know a lot of people are thinking is not an amazing double, but one, we know that Kane will be nailed for 90 minutes in each of those games, so 180 minutes of football. That's a really good thing to have in a double game week. And number 2, this is Harry Kane, a world-class player. I've said this before, I'll say it again, but the best players in the world don't really care who their opponent is. They will score against anyone, especially, you know, Arsenal here, who he absolutely loves a goal against Arsenal, much to my bemusement. But then he's got Liverpool, who he's literally already scored against Liverpool in the Premier League this season, so there's that as well. He always, you know, turns it on at the end of the season as well. People often say that about Kane. He always bangs at these last games of the season. Honestly, a lot of people talking about removing Spurs players after their loss against Brighton. I think I would be really terrified to go into this final part of the season without them. I think they could really go off. It's kind of all set up for them. Great underlying numbers, great attacking play, great fixtures, and everything to play for. It's the perfect storm, and I really don't think you should let one loss distract you from that. The next keep is Felipe Coutinho. Coutinho is one of the most popular transfers out this week as well, and I do totally understand why, because it'll be for similar reasons that I've been kind of talking a lot about recently. The fact that your midfield slots are just so precious, you have to demand a lot for them. You have to be really, really fussy when it comes to your midfielders. And if you're thinking about bringing in a Havertz or a Mount, who are both similar prices to Coutinho seems like you know, pretty much primed to be removed from your teams, right? So I do kind of understand the logic behind it, but if you've held Coutinho for this long, I think you have to see it through at this point. You're so close to the Villa double-double in game weeks 36 and 37. His underlying stats are not even that bad, even if he isn't getting the points that you want. We all know that Coutinho has been performing really well against some of the weaker teams since his return to the Premier League, and maybe he goes missing a little bit in the bigger games. But between now and the end of the season, we have Norwich in 35, so that's going to be primed for Coutinho to go off there. We've got 2 games against Burnley in each of the double game weeks, and then after that, perhaps he is an easy sell when he plays Man City in game week 38. Now, those of you without a free hit in particular, you're going to want to keep those players with a double-double, you know, with multiple double game weeks left. And I've actually seen Coutinho in a lot of wildcard drafts from some pretty big creators, so he's clearly like still a pretty desirable player to go for. So all in all, guys, if it's at all possible to get a Chelsea player without sacrificing Coutinho, or you know, or any other of your Aston Villa players, I would really try and keep Coutinho if you can. If you've got no choice and this is your only way to get to a Chelsea midfielder, then fair enough. But if possible, try and keep Coutinho. And finally, some avoids. We'll start you off with Bruno Guimaraes. I don't know. This is an interesting one, as I actually really like the player. He's not a defensive midfielder, and his score so far in Game Week 33, I don't think that's that much of a coincidence. I don't think it's that much of a surprise. He's a good player. He's a box-to-box midfielder. He's clearly really a top player in football. And he plays Norwich next, which isn't a bad fixture at all. But is this seriously the direction you want to move your FPL team in? All of these Chelsea players with a double game week this week, all of those players from other teams that double in 36 and 37, players you want to start planning ahead and getting in now, and you want to go for a 4.9 million Newcastle player with awful fixtures after 34, no doubles, nothing to play for, and taking up a precious midfield slot. Honestly, make it make sense. In another situation, there's no doubt in my mind that the better Bruno would be a great FPL pick, but just under current circumstances, it just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. He's not going to score a brace every week. By buying him, you would probably have to sell someone who actually potentially doubles in a future game week. I do love the player. I think he'll go down as a bit of a Newcastle legend in future seasons if he stays around for a little while. But if you want to progress your FPL team ready for the final game weeks of the season, then this is definitely not the way to do it. Plus, if none of us buy him, I won't have to attempt to pronounce his name anymore, because that is just really annoying, trying to pronounce a name that you honestly are really bad at pronouncing. I've already embarrassed myself enough trying to say it, but I'll do it one more time for the lols. Avoid Bruno Guimaraes. And the final avoid for the video is Cristiano Ronaldo. I know he is probably the most popular player in the Premier League at the moment, and I know it probably doesn't take too much for people to get very hyped up about him, but if we're being totally real, I would not let this performance against a woeful Norwich team get in your head. He is one of the most popular transfers in this week, and I kind of think those are the primary reasons why: the popularity of the player and the fact that he has got, he got a really good score in Gameweek 33, and he technically has a double in 34. But this does scream knee-jerk to me and focuses too much on past points than future points. So let's assume that most of us have 2 premiums in their teams, and for most of us, one of those 2 premiums is going to be Salah. And I know it's not everyone, guys, before you jump in the comments, I know it's not everyone, but most of us have 2 premiums, one of them is going to be Salah, right? That means in order to get Ronaldo, you're going to have to sacrifice having Son, Kane, KDB, potentially Mane as well. All of those players I just listed, not only do I think are better FPL options with more to play for in a single game week, but I also, they actually have more than one an extra fixture in the calendar compared to Ronaldo. They have one more fixture to play between now and the end of the season, so you get a double game week in there, and you don't get a blank. So Ronaldo has a double game week this week, yes, but it's a tough double. He blanks in 37 as well. So basically, if you bring in Ronaldo now, you're guaranteed have to transfer him back out again. You have, between now and the end of the season, and this is a scary thought, guys, you have 5 free transfers left to use this season. Oh, have I got that right? Yeah, 34, 35, 36, 37, and 38. Yeah, 5 free transfers left. Do you really want to use one of, not just one of them, but 2 of them on transferring Ronaldo into your team and then back out of your team, leaving you with just 3 free transfers to use for anything else? Now, I'm not saying Ronaldo is a bad player. If we could have a team full of premiums, we absolutely would. It's just one of those ones that's kind of about opportunity cost. You lose the opportunity to have the other great premiums. You lose the opportunity to spend 2 of your remaining 5 transfers elsewhere. And I find myself asking, is it really worth it? I'd rather focus on Chelsea players who have a better double, they're cheaper, and once they're in, they are in. They stay in your team. You don't have to worry too much about moving them back out of your teams later. But that's just me. So in summary, guys, our entire focus this game week should be figuring out how to get Chelsea players into our team. It might take a sacrifice or 2, it might take a hit, but I really think that's just, the most important thing to do. Havertz, Mount, James, Rudiger, Alonso, and Werner, those are my favourite picks. If you can get 1 or 2 of them into your team without much fuss, I think you're going to be on for a winner there. United do also have a double this week, but their lack of double in 36 and their blank in 37 pretty much rules them all out as avoids for me. Keep them if you have them already, but buying them will probably cause you more problems than they're probably worth in the long run, and that's pretty much it, guys. All focus on Chelsea players. How are you going to get them in? I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy what you saw today, please do leave a like. Massively helps out the channel, and do subscribe if you're new around here as well. Plenty more FPL content to come pretty much every single day. Yeah, like I said, guys, if you are looking to get in some Chelsea players this week, I'd love to hear what kind of players you are willing to sacrifice in order to get those Chelsea guys in for the double. And which Chelsea players are your favourite as well? If you've got any hidden gems for us to read about, love to hear it, guys. But there we go, guys. That's the end of the video. We've got a 100 experts video tomorrow. We'll have team selection, obviously. We'll have streams and stuff, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so do stick around. But that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.